Welcome back to the program. We have our first guests in the studio. To my immediate left is Mr. Ashley Calise. He's an agronomist at the Ministry of Agriculture. To his left, Mr. Ezekiel Samuel, a farmer and representative of the St. Andrew Progressive Farmers Association. To Mr. Samuel's left is Mr. Kalfani Kerwin. He's the president of the St. Mark Police Farm Watch and Farmers Association. We're talking this morning about sustainable agriculture or urban, peri-urban agriculture. Good morning. Welcome to you all.
Good morning.
Okay, great. It's good to have you. So I've said your names, but just tell us a little bit more about yourselves. I'll start with Mr. Calise and go across to Mr. Kerwin.
As I said, my name is Ashley Calise. I'm an agronomist in the Ministry of Agriculture, and I'm involved in crop production, soil and water conservation.
Great. All right, Mr. Samuel.
Good morning again, and good morning to viewers. My name is Ezekiel Samuel. I'm a farmer and the PRO of the St. Andrews Progressive Farmers Association.
Great. What is the association about?
It's an organization which involves small commercial farmers, and we come together for the basis of sharing materials, sharing information, and it really specifically to providing safe and economical produce to the public.
Good. Mr. Kerwin.
Morning to farmers. I am Kalfani Kerwin, president of the Police Farm Watch and Farmers Association of the St. Mark area. And we have 3 such active organizations in the area, the St. Patrick's and the St. John's. Also, I want to extend Happy New Year to those organizations and the farmers.
Okay, good. So
Yeah.
what are some of the activities that you're involved in?
Well, we actually started with the Police Farm Watch with Pridia Lasny. So we help with that in terms of reports and having an idea as to where the hotspots are for Pridia Lasny and bring it forward to the police so they could do something about it. But besides that, we do activities. Last year, our biggest activity was to launch a Farmers Day, which we don't have in Grenada, and we will proceed with hopefully to have a much bigger Farmers Day this year, 2016.
Right. So but were you satisfied with how things went? It was the first one, as you mentioned. But were you satisfied with the response?
No, because there was a lot of I should say dissatisfaction within the larger entities. For example, the agricultural department ministry thought we should have brought the idea to them for them to bring it forward, and things like that. It's a big idea for Grenada, and it would sort of have the farmers rallying around something, because we are so divisive in Grenada, and we need a rallying point, and that's a great rallying point for the farmers. And a lot of people felt left out, and we should incorporate the big organizations.
Right. So, of course, with all that in mind, I guess you would have gone back to the drawing board. So, would they be incorporated this time? Is it a partnership you want to have this year?
But, things like that, and as long as I'm involved in it, it stays to the purpose and to the cause.
Okay.
The fact is that we need farmers to come together and learn to organize themselves, and we don't need no big brother to tell us how to organize and where and when to organize. No. The farmers would come together, and they are the ones to make it a success or make it a failure.
Okay, so when will it be held?
It's the first Sunday before Father's Day.
Okay, great. All right, so you each and every one of you went to Cuba on a sustainable agriculture or urban peri-urban agriculture initiative. All right, so I'll come back to Mr. Calise. Explain to us the experience that you had there. What exactly you did when you went there?
This visit to Cuba was to have a first-hand look of how the Cubans are producing vegetables in a way to combat climate change. With climate change, there is excessive rainfall, and with that you have extreme weather conditions like flooding, soil erosion, and higher incidence of pests and diseases. Now this, it is termed in Cuba urban and peri-urban agriculture because of the location in which it is being done.
Okay.
It is being done closer to the cities, so that it is close. The food can get to the people in a more timely manner,
Or
in
less
a
expense.
less expense for
Okay.
transport, and in better quality, better condition. But so this is the main focus on this production method,
Right.
and it is not a completely new to us. In the fact that it is an organic way of producing,
Right.
to show us that what we have learned before doing our studies, where we apply large quantities of fertilizers and pesticides and weedicides to produce a crop. Now we are going back now to remind ourselves that we can do it in a much more organic and we'll say a much more healthy
Right.
way of producing food, so that the people can eat healthier foods.
Right. So I want to make sure I get it clear. So you're doing it closer to the cities, as you mentioned. It doesn't mean that there's limited space in the city area, of course, that they're utilizing in an efficient manner?
Yes, this is one of the points. The city is very crowded, and they need to feed them, and the distance from the city to the farms are very far. So the transportation and the cost of transporting the food is it's a problem. And also the soil quality, where there is very poor soil, you can actually do this type of farming and get maximum yield from this method.
Okay, great. All right, so let me come to you, Mr. Samuel. Tell us about your experience. Were you involved in the same thing or in a different
We
area?
did the same
Same thing, okay.
exposure.
Right.
It's really a familiarization exercise for the people who were not very acquainted with it, and as a refresher for the agronomist. I think it was a big experience for me in terms of seeing how little can be used to get much. And the Cuban experience is a real learning and a teaching project, basically, not only for the Caribbean, small island states, but for bigger countries who
Right.
actually send students and producers there to learn about the project. Organic farming, as it's called in Cuba, is basically farming on a small scale as we do here, small plots within the city, within the urban areas. And this came about because of the crisis that Cuba experienced in 1991. And in the face of climate change, as Mr. Callis pointed out, where you have extremes like droughts and heavy rainfall, and so all these things caused Cuba to come up with a new idea, especially as it relates to inputs. Large sums of chemical fertilizers and pesticides and weedicides were used during the Green Revolution,
Okay.
when they practiced a lot of monoculture with sugar cane. But now that feeding the populace is most important, then priority has to be given to this type of farming. And it's amazing to see how much can be produced in small spaces because of the integrated approach in terms of crop rotation, in terms of soil management, in terms of the development of biopesticides, etc.
Right.
So it's a real learning experience, and we're looking forward to share those information with farmers, and hope that gradually we'll place ourselves in a position so that we can be able to produce as Ecuans.
Great. So has it shown in some way that we may have been doing, because every day we learn, as we live we learn.
Sure, right.
Has it shown in some way that we may have been doing some things, maybe not necessarily the right way, as you mentioned about utilizing the space?
You're so correct, because you find that agriculture is the oldest industry on earth, but things are always evolving, and some of the ideas that we had previously have to be changed, new men and new ideas. So it's fortunate for us as adults now to experience this kind of a change in approach, and those things are very pertinent, as I said, very, very pertinent.
Great. So let me come to Mr. Kerwin. First of all, when was this course held and for how long was it held?
It was a 2-week course from actually November 29th to December 13th. The course is actually a postgrad course. It's not a simple course. And it was a lot of information that we had to absorb. In fact, we were given certain materials that we'll still have to study now, as we return to Grenada.
Okay.
But in addition to what my two brethren here said, I want to add the fact that one of the striking things to me was the fact that Cuba was trying to develop their own seed bank, which is something every country must do, particularly in the face of climate change. And as the climate changes, it would affect plants, it would affect
of course.
organisms, other living organisms. And the key thing there for food security is to have those plants and organisms survive. And to do that, you must have a seed bank that could do that, right? So what they were saying is that you have to propagate the seeds in those conditions. So which means then we don't have those conditions yet. It's fast approaching. So what we have to do is to maybe mimic a condition and propagate the seeds. Mimic a harsh condition and propagate the seeds. Because these are the seeds that would survive. So if, for example, you put seeds on rocky ground in the heat of the sun and they do germinate, then that's a good sign that will be seeds. The one that don't make it, obviously, they are ruled out. But Grenada have a big problem in terms of their food security because we don't have a seed bank. And most of our seeds come from foreign, right? And I think one of the first tasks of the Ministry of Agriculture is to propose or to get going a serious seed bank where we could go back and find all of our original crops, like the corn, for example. It's very important, easy to grow in the case of a hurricane or something.
Right.
This is something we could get back on our foot on, those type of nutritious crops. We need to get our original seeds, in a bank, so in case of disaster, we could do that. I just want to clarify one thing, because people might have difficulty with it. Peri-urban and urban. This has been done. Cuba is not the only place that's doing that. In fact, it's done in Chicago, in the United States, and other large cities. And urban refers to the inner city. So when you have vacant lots, people can utilize it
Right.
for food production. Peri-urban refers to the perimeter of the urban city, so the highways and the byways. Sometimes when you build roads, you have large stretches of lands that is not residential,
Okay.
in the sense that you don't have people living there,
Yeah.
and those areas can also be utilized. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I want to come back now to Mr. Caliste. He threw out a challenge that the ministry should. I mean, this is a good idea. Is it something that the ministry has thought of already, but maybe for whatever reason it just hasn't yet gotten off the ground or anything? But just update us in terms of I'm talking about the seed bank here.
Yes, the conservation of germplasm is being done on not on a very large scale. Each farmer tends to conserve his seeds and his germplasm material it has, and but we need to have a national drive.
Right. So what you're talking about is what each farmer is doing is more on an individual level. You're talking
Yes,
about.
on an
So
individual
we
level.
haven't yet done a collective approach.
We have been doing some for some crops.
Okay.
For example, at the Maribo Agricultural Station, we have some germplasm up there. We need to amplify, do more. We have a lot of citrus,
Right.
and we have some other vegetables, but we need to do it in a more in a more diverse way,
Right.
so we can have different species being conserved, especially open pollinated crops.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I want to come back to Mr. Kerwin. All that you've all spoken about so far. how do you see this, if we can employ some of these techniques here, advancing our Zero Hunger initiative and also helping to reduce the country's food import bill?
Well, we don't have a lot of land space. So production have to be scientific in terms of how you use the land space. What crops would you use in those land space? Then, if we have to introduce new vegetable, we have to be, which is a must. You have to introduce new varieties that could withstand climate change. And as I said, some varieties would not make it. Then the question of distribution comes into play. For example, right now we have a big problem with distribution, because you know that if tomatoes is in season, you might get it in St. Patrick's for $5 a pound, and you might get it in St. George's for $10 a pound, because the scarcity would be in St. George's. So the distribution comes into play. Food production by itself does not solve the problem of hunger or poverty. For hunger, you need distribution, where the government would have to come in. And for poverty, you need some economic return on the production. You know, if a farmer is going to produce something and there is no economic gain, there is no reason for him to produce it, which brings in a lot of other entities, like, for example, Pridia Larceny. Because if you're producing and people are stealing your stuff, it doesn't give you an incentive to produce.
Yeah, exactly.
So it could work, providing that there are these other supporting mechanisms to ensure that distribution, economic return, then in terms of the cost to who needs it, there have to be some subsidies. Because a farmer producing and selling at the cost of production, people would not be able to afford it. Yeah? So once these things are there, we could see some progress in terms of reducing hunger and poverty in Grenada.
But do you think we are, in terms of some of the things that you mentioned, do you think we are still a little way off from achieving those goals?
Yes, we are far off. We are far off. Like I said, it's happening now. And there hasn't been a solution for years. There has not been a solution. Why we have such diversity in prices of our products, for example.
Right.
We have MNIB, and MNIB have a set schedule, and it's lower than what most of the outside farmers would sell for, you see. But MNIB is getting things in bulk. In fact, they are underselling the farmer, really and truly, because what they pay for it is little or nothing. And we had that argument before, so I'm not saying anything new. We had that discussion before. And so they could afford to put a certain markup and make a profit, but still underselling the farmer. Yeah? And that have to be rectified. Farmers don't produce because the economic return is too low. So MNIB, as the main guarantor of purchasing farmers' product, have to step up to the plate and say, I'm going to give you, let me know what your cost of production is, I'm giving you something close to that. Now, it brings in another problem. When the price of the local product becomes closer to reality, people might choose to go for the inputs, because the inputs might be cheaper.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, again, this is where the government would come in and say, no, farmers need some type of protection, and this is how much inputs we're going to bring in, as opposed to how much local products we're going to allow on the market becomes a real issue. So again, it could work with those interceding factors in place. We have no problem.
Right. Based on all that was just said by Mr. Kerwin, we do have some challenges. From your knowledge as a farmer, we still have some challenges to overcome.
You're sure right. Most of the challenges that we face would be surrounding perception and education. Now, Cuba is very well mindful about the financial implication as it concerns health. And we're talking about chronic diseases, and cancer might be one of them. The toxicity of our soil is very high. So does the soil in Cuba. And from a financial standpoint, small island states like Grenada would find it very difficult to cope with treating those diseases. And Cuba does help. Cuba helps with our cancer patients. In Cuba, patients are put on special diets, organic, locally grown food, and they know why. Now, farmers here have a strange perception. Whatever drives them to produce, be it finance, they just produce, and they use a lot of chemicals indiscriminately because of lack of knowledge in most cases. And although our foreparents and so were using a lot of organic material, nowadays people would not want to go into that because they think that the crops are going to be slow in terms of production. So we need to re-educate so that we can get people to appreciate the safety in terms of practicing organic farming. More so because of the need to preserve and conserve the environment. Organic farming is all about getting the whole of biodiversity to exist harmoniously.
Right.
And we talk about a cyclical system where one farm can make use of everything. Organic material derived from animals, animal waste, from what we term as plant waste, can be recycled. And everything on the farm can go in that cyclical manner. And we can coexist together.
Of course.
That's basically what the idea is for.
So, all right, so my final question is to you. Agriculture, as you mentioned earlier, is an age or something, but it's evolving because of technology and all that. Do you think that young people are sufficiently appreciative or aware of the importance of agriculture, or do they still have the mindset that it's simply just a fork and a spade and a cutlass in the land with a pair of boots and things like that? They're not actually seeing the advancements and the importance of agriculture now to the Zero Hunger Initiative and poverty alleviation.
Well, as I said before, we need to re-educate, because at school we graduate kids at secondary level, at college level. They do courses in agriculture, but they do not go back to production. And it's probably because they do not understand the relevance of it to reach a level of sustainability at first, or in terms of finding livelihoods.
Right.
Kids are not being told about the profitability of growing crops, the profitability of rearing animals. And they find other options in the service area, in tourism, and most of them look forward to finding jobs from the government or the private sector. So if you re-educate them on providing themselves with safe foods, that's a good way to start. And it has to be taught not only formally, but at club level, the 4-H groups, at community level, at the family level, so that we can build up an appreciation. Because there is an ongoing distraction in terms of imported foods. The presentation of those foods are so well done that the kids will go for it. And you see on TV, what is trendy. So it's difficult, and a lot of work has to be done so that we can break that cycle.
Great. All right, any final words from you, gentlemen? I'll start with you, Mr. Khalid. Realize your phone's stressing you.
Yes, you can switch off.
Okay.
So I would like to say thanks to the Ministry of Agriculture, and in collaboration with the FAO, has had the vision to pursue such a good initiative in promoting this healthy way of producing food for our nation. Because over the past, we as graduates, as agronomists, have been trained to use a lot of agrochemicals and to have a successful crop, a commercially successful crop. But sometimes a successful commercial crop does not mean that it's the healthiest crop, because of the amount of inputs and agrochemicals we put into that crop. So I think it's a very good initiative and the right way forward. I must also acknowledge the Grenada Organic Agriculture Movement, GOM, which we have started a few years ago, and we already started a few projects in a few sites with farmers, showing them how to do organic farming, and how to incorporate this idea of organic farming into our farming system, so that we can have a healthier nation and a more productive nation.
Great. Mr. Samuel?
Well, it has been a serious investment, a heavy undertaking for FAO and the government through the Ministry of Agriculture. And I must congratulate them on that move. It's very timely. I want to encourage the farmers, especially those who are not being recognized, like the older folks, for their patience in terms of practicing and working with organic material from the start and being natural. Even some of the organizations like GOM now, and we have at Mount Morris a thriving organization, the Permacultural Society.
Yeah.
All these folks are doing a wonderful job in terms of ensuring that the environment and the planet remain safe and intact.
Definitely.
So thank you so much for the opportunity as well.
You're most
Being
welcome.
here to talk about our project.
Great, you're welcome. Mr. Kerwin?
Well, I wouldn't repeat anything that my two brothers said. They already gave the thank you, so I am following in the same pattern. But what I would like to stress is the fact that agriculture has been looked down on for many years, agricultural workers. And there is a stigma attached to it which prevents new people from coming in. But I want to make the point to youths and everyone who is listening that agriculture is one of the most beneficial activities for Grenada, for most countries in fact, but in particular in this situation for Grenada. The two pillars of the economy that contributed most was tourism and agriculture for the 2015 year budget. Therefore, we should appreciate what agriculture is doing for the country. However, I want to say to the politicians and those in authority that the farmers are contributing heavily to the growth of the country, and there should be some type of appreciation and give back to the farmers. The farmers are not getting enough. If farmers were to be left on their own to do their own inputs and stuff, then the price of the agricultural products would be very high. Until the farmer can maintain, as we are seeing now, get to that level where you could do your compost and get to organic farming and be profitable, as long as you stay in this traditional way where you have to use these heavy inputs. Yeah? Because again, farmers are doing it and it'll be difficult to get them to break them away from it, because they have a small plot of land, they repeat production on the same plot of land, and they're looking for economic survival.
Right.
So they're looking for highest product. And as we had said before, this is not the best way, but it is the most economical way. And unless we have some serious input where we could diversify from that in terms of support for the farmer until they can diversify and stand on their own, then we would be in trouble. So this would be the point. One final thing. The choice is always the consumer. So if we are, as my brother here, Ezekiel, said, the education component is very important, but not only for the farmer, education to the public so they know what to buy. Because if a farmer is producing something and it's not being sold, he have to change. So the onus is on the consumer to ensure that what they're buying is safe and organic.
Definitely. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. We've been speaking with Mr. Ashley Calise, agronomist at the Ministry of Agriculture. He's to my immediate left. To his left, Mr. Ezekiel Samuel, farmer and representative of St. Andrew Progressive Farmers Association. And to Mr. Samuel's left is Mr. Kalfani Kerwin, the president of the St. Mark Police Farm Watch and Farmers Association. And of course, we've been talking about the urban and peri-urban agriculture course that they attended from November 29th to December 13th in Cuba. Is all about sustainable development and utilizing land wisely to produce, and even in times of climate change, just to ensure that we have enough to feed the country. We take a quick break. We'll be right back.